Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, but before we start this interview, I wanted to know a little bit about you. Like, besides the fact of being in the political field, just like you as a person.
Hmm. That is a good question. I tend to forget about that sometimes, especially during the last 31 days that we have going on. So
Yeah.
I'm from the Midlands area in South Carolina. I'm from Irmo. And then I went to Newberry College, so stayed in South Carolina, and I graduated there in 2011. So I'm 31. So start getting the gray hair and glasses and everything like that. But other than that, just I work a good bit. I love hanging out with my friends, my family, of course, when there is some spare and free time, which is not very frequent right now.
Yeah.
But that's it. Is there anything specific, I guess, or?
No, I just wanted to know just a little bit.
Now, what about you? What year are you?
I'm a sophomore.
You're a sophomore. Where are you from?
I'm from Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Oh, okay. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, are you at home, or are you
Yeah.
in your dorm, or are you in Spartanburg right now?
I chose to stay home.
Oh,
I
okay.
thought it'd be smarter to save the dorm money.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, definitely.
And just stay home and study online. I mean, I like it so much better.
Yeah. Golly, that's one thing. I can't imagine being a college student right now with all the craziness going on, and it should be like the best time of your life, and my heart for y'all. So God bless
Thank you. But no, usually I thought it was going to take me longer to adjust, but I actually like it.
Oh, wow. Okay. So are you a poli-sci major, or?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what you want to do with that?
I want to actually be a paralegal.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
To first start off, but I actually do want to intern and stuff because I feel like I need the experience before I can just say, yeah, I want to be a paralegal. Like, I want to see what actually goes into it.
Oh, yeah.
Because what if it's too much for me and I have no idea, and I'm just like, now I have a degree and I have no idea what I'm going to do.
There you go. There you go.
Awesome. Yeah, but I'm going to start off. Thank you. So I'm going to start off with the first question.
Okay.
Is how did you get your position in the Republican Party as executive director?
So I have worked on and off for the party since 2011. So when I graduated college, or my senior year in college, there was a guy running for state party chairman, and I helped on his campaign. And then the day that he got elected was actually the day that I graduated college. So I had a job Monday, which was great.
Yeah.
So literally started out at the bottom of the totem pole here. I started as like finance assistant, which meant I went and got the mail and did data entry and, all that kind of, stuff, minimal stuff. So then that was in 2011. So then in 2013, everybody in our office got elevated to the next position. So I was promoted to political director, and prior to being finance assistant, I was promoted to member services director, which meant I dealt with our executive committee members and elected officials and stuff like that. So then I became political director in 13, and then that was in the beginning of 13. And then summer, August time of 13, I actually went to work for the RNC, but here in South Carolina as their state director. And that was going to be through the 2014 cycle. So I did that. So I was still at the party, but I was answering to the national folks instead of the local folks.
Yeah.
So then that got me through the 14 cycle, and then in 15 I officially came back to the state party as political director, and I was only here for it was 5 months. I was back. And I had that was right before all the presidential candidates for the 16 cycle announced, and they were all starting to staff up. So I met with some of those campaigns, and I decided to go work for Governor Mike Huckabee. So I was his state director here in South Carolina, which ultimately meant I had to go to Georgia, Virginia, Iowa,
Yeah.
like all the other states too. And so the night of the Iowa caucus, Governor Huckabee pulled out of the race. And I came back the next day to South Carolina and met with the state party chairman at the time. And he offered me the role of executive director. So that was in January, February of 2016. And then in 2017, so that state party chairman didn't run for re-election. A new gentleman who's our current chairman now, Drew McKissick, he became state party chairman, and I stayed on with him, and still ED. So I've been on and off of the party since 11, but I became ED in 16. And I interned at the party in 2009. 2009. When I was in college, I was an intern here. So literally started at the bottom and I was here.
And then worked your way up.
Yeah.
So has coronavirus brought an effect to working?
So our office, whenever coronavirus happened, we had actually just finished wrapping up having the president a rally down in North Charleston. It was February 28th because the Democratic presidential primary was the 29th. So that was the last time that we had a huge event prior to Corona. And then like the following week, we were actually in Rock Hill. Congressman Norman had a fundraiser, and Ambassador Haley was his keynote speaker. So that was like our last like major fundraiser. And so then coronavirus is like a real thing because we had like heard about it, but I was like, what? This is insane. It's not going to be a real thing. And then everything starts shutting down, and it's like, wait, what's going on? Stuff like that. And aside from like campaigning, we were also in the legislative process. Oh, you were breaking up. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I didn't say anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did. But so we were also in the legislative process as well. The legislature was in session. So we were, there were bills and stuff we were working on as well. And then also to throw all that in, we were in the middle of candidate filing. So whenever any candidate runs as a Republican in South Carolina, they have to file, and all their paperwork comes through the South Carolina Republican Party. And so coronavirus happens, and it's like, well, we have to be in the office. So we actually ended up not shutting our office down at all. But again, our office is small enough, and we didn't have any interns or anything. It was just like our quote unquote essential staff to get us through the filing process and everything. And then on top of that, we were in the process of our convention, our delegates and alternates were in the process of electing who the national delegates and national alternates were going to be to the RNC convention. So that was all going on in April and May. So we still didn't slow down the no interns and just our smaller staff. And that was up until the primary in June. And then after the primary in June, we hired up and we started doing smaller in-person events, and we've been taking it like a step-by-step increments, and it's been a process of fully reopening. And I think officially like really we're full on probably like beginning of August or so. But a lot of like our events that we do annually and stuff like that were either scaled back, or we haven't had them, or we had to do them virtual. So that's one thing you learn in politics is whatever cards are dealt, you just got to deal with it as best as you can and keep on trucking, because there ain't no stop time around here. So that's how we've had to proceed. So it was weird at first. And like all my friends, like that are my age, so late 20s, early 30s, and a lot of them work in like state government, or they're teachers, or they're or not nurses, but like just they were able to work from home, and I'm like the only one, and I'm like, oh, you all suck. Like you're in your PJs drinking coffee, and I'm still going to work every day. But I'm a very routine person, so it was fine. But it was just was like, y'all suck. Like, you're able to like take more vacation time and stuff like that right now. So I was super jealous for a little while.
Everything is settled in. Everything's just normal
Oh, I can't. Can you speak up a little bit? Yeah.
now.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
You can go. Okay,
Yeah.
so has that become a routine now? Like Corona, dealing with the routine?
Yeah, it's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, whenever we have our events now, we've got like our standard protocol, and we're very I guess we're more cautious about and we're more understanding on people too. And instead of having events in like smaller areas, I have bigger areas with the same size events. So spend a little bit more money on that kind of stuff. But we've just dealt with it. It sucks to not be able to be like in full on mode like what we had planned for the 2020 cycle, especially like not being able to have national convention and stuff like that. But again, we just had to deal with it as best as we could. So adapt, I guess.
Adapt, yeah.
Yeah.
So, your inspiration to what made you want to do all this? Who influenced you the most?
You know, I don't know. So I didn't think I'd ever do this. And so whenever I was in high school, my sophomore year, junior year, I interned for Congressman Joe Wilson, who's congressman here in this area, 2nd Congressional District, at his congressional office. My parents were friends with he and his wife, but also some local elected officials in this area. So that's just how I got involved. And I just kept getting more involved, and eventually like helped on like was a little intern on his campaign that cycle. And so I was on like the official side and the campaign side. And I thought I was really cool when I was in high school. And it just kind of evolved from there. And I just kept, getting on other campaigns and meeting people and staying in touch and networking a lot. So it's not that there's necessarily been like a person for the inspiration, but I mean, the one thing I love working about the party is that we have the campaign side of things, which is really cool because you get to help great public servants get elected to office, and you have to fight really hard for that. But then at the same time, like we do a lot of like election law reform stuff, and we get to do fundraising and really cool events. And we get like we deal on like the official side. So literally like I deal with the White House to school board on a daily basis. And so it's pretty cool. And I love seeing the people that you get to meet and why they're passionate and why they consider themselves Republicans and different issues and stuff like that. So
Speaking about high school, I read that you minored in Spanish.
I did. I cannot speak it though.
Cannot?
No.
So my question was, has it been beneficial towards meeting new people?
So I got the minor. So at Newberry, in order to have a political science major, you had to have a minor in a foreign language. So that was Spanish at Newberry. And so, or not a minor, but you had to have like 12 hours of credit. And so whenever it got to my senior year, so Newberry is a private school and it's very expensive to go to. And my parents were like, if we're paying all this money, you're going to have a full course load every semester. So I met with my advisor and they're like, oh, well, you've taken all these Spanish classes. If you take 2 more, you can get a minor. And the same thing with my history minor as well, because I'd taken so many history classes. And so the Spanish minor, I love the culture and the history. And so I have a really bad accent too, and I can't roll my tongue. And my professor would make fun of me, Dr. Cole, because I cannot speak it to save my life. But one thing that's really cool is we do Hispanic outreach. For instance, I'll give this a good example. Last night I went to speak at a county party in Sumter County, which I don't know if you're familiar with Sumter, but it's in the 5th district. So like Ralph Norman has the Rock Hill area. He also has Sumter County too, or most of Sumter. And I was speaking last night. It was like a final push for getting folks motivated and ready to volunteer. And there's this guy there who, and he is Hispanic speaking and he's super pro-life. And super like wanting to get more Hispanics and Latinas involved into the party. And so we have within the RNC structure, we have Latinas for Trump. And so I've got like voter guides and stuff, and like I can read Spanish and I can like translate it. I just can't speak it. And so I connected him with one of our national guys last night to see if we can get him to go into Spanish speaking churches, because a lot of them, most of them are pro-life, meaning they're Republican voters, for the conservative voters for the most part. And he was like amazed that we had that. But with that population, you know, it's like that. And he had read my bio too.
Yeah.
And so he like came up to me and started speaking Spanish. And I was like, hold up. No. I was like, English only, please. But yeah, I mean, it's people read that. I probably should take it off, but I'm proud that I have that minor, because I actually worked really hard for that, and I had A's every class I took. But it's interesting because that's another way to connect with people as well, you know, because they see me with like blonde hair, green eyes, and they're like, you do not look like you would speak Spanish whatsoever, like what? And I'm like, I don't really speak it. I'm pretty knowledgeable about the culture, and I've studied it enough to get a degree in it. So.
I'm taking Spanish classes.
Oh, I can't hear you.
I'm taking Spanish classes right now.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just trying to see, like,
it's helpful. That's the thing, is any other culture aside from the just American culture is very beneficial in politics, because it gives you another reason to connect with other people and to understand why they vote the way, or why they think the way that they do. And if I don't know what your political affiliation is, but depending on what that is, that would help you connect with them on a whole other level, because it's about being like very personable and stuff like that. So even if you like, I would tell you the same thing if you did like German or French or something. It gives you a whole nother level to connect with people on. So definitely stay on that track. That'll be helpful.
I do speak another language.
Oh, wow.
I am Indian.
Okay.
And so I feel like it gives me an advantage, because there's not really many Indians in South Carolina.
No. You could be like the next Nikki Haley.
Yeah. And like, we actually know her. Like,
oh, wow.
We know her family. Yeah, and stuff. And so I felt like, yeah, we need more people to represent Indians.
Oh, yeah. Like maybe the more diverse and cultured you are, the better.
Okay. All right. So you told me a lot about what you do.
I can't.
Okay, so you told me a lot about what you do, but I want to specifically know, like, what's the main thing you have to do as an executive director? Like, what is the main focal point?
Keep the chairman in line. And he can probably hear me saying that. His office is right next to mine, and he'd be laughing. I'm surprised he hasn't walked by yet. Keep people happy. And not happy, but just in a good place and motivated. So we have an executive committee that's made up of all 46 counties in South Carolina, and there's 2 people per county that are on like our board, and they run each county local Republican Party, and they are always wanting something or needing something. And so in order to motivate them and get them to do their job, I got to keep them happy. And then on top of that, we have all these candidates that are running for office, and some of them have never run before. Some of them have run multiple times. Some of them are going to lose, and I tell them they're going to lose, and they still run, and they're still really needy. Or some of them know they're going to win because they don't have any general opposition, but they still want to have a campaign. Some of them say stupid stuff on Twitter and social media or in the real media. So it's a lot of balls in the air that you have to juggle. And have to have a positive attitude. That's a big.
You have to find like the middle balance, basically.
Yes. Yeah. And like, I can plan my day, and I'm like, okay, this is on my to-do list today. I'm going to check it off as I go. There are some days where there are no check marks off of my to-do list for that day, because so much other stuff has happened the last minute. And literally, something could happen to the president or to the governor or to one of our candidates or to the chairman, and I have to immediately be able to flip switches and deal with whatever that can be. So it's just a lot of, I guess, balls in the air. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that makes sense.
The president happy. I heard that Trump got corona. So does that change anything within the race?
So, I don't think it's going to change anything in the race. And what's interesting about that, and this little personal story, so I typically don't like fall asleep until like 2 a.m. just because I've got so much going on. And most people, it takes forever to fall asleep, and I'm one of those people. but we have been running full course this week, and I had to go to Sumter last night, and I got home and I had to do some emails, and we are in some fundraising stuff with Senator Graham, so I had to get some stuff to his fundraiser last night. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, I'm gonna fall asleep. So I went and laid down in bed, and I was like on my phone, and I fell asleep. And I was probably like 12:15-ish or so, which is early for me typically. And when I woke up this morning and I looked at my phone and I had all these notifications about the president having corona, it was like, what in the world is going on, you know? So while you were getting your connection thing fixed or whatever, I was looking at Twitter on my phone, and the campaign put out an official statement about upcoming events and rallies that they had planned, that they're now going to take virtual, or they're going to postpone, obviously, because he's going to have to quarantine for at least like 10 days. So as far as that kind of stuff, the in-person stuff, it changes, but I go back to what I was talking about earlier, whenever anything can happen and cards are dealt and you just got to deal with it. We're 31 days from an election and we just got to deal with it, you know? So
puts out a bad timing.
Yeah, to say the least.
My next question, like, you've been answering all my questions, which I love.
Oh, good. Okay.
Like,
in planning for what?
A convention. When you're planning for a convention, what is your role?
So for national convention?
Yeah.
Okay. So when did they announce it was going to be in Charlotte? Last year? Year before last? Last year. So we were very fortunate for South Carolina for it to be in Charlotte, which was great because hour-ish away from Columbia, hour and a half. It was awesome. But also, so Glenn McCall, who is our national committeeman, which the way that the national party structure is in the Republican Party, you have 3 members of the committee for that on the national level. And those 3 members consist of the chairman, who's my boss, who's in that office over there, Cindy Costa, who is my national committee woman. She actually lives down in Charleston. And then Glenn McCall, who is my national committeeman. And Glenn, he lives in Rock Hill, and he's actually, I think he's chairman of the board for Winthrop now too. Yeah. And he is one of my most favorite people. Love Glenn McCall, one of my most favorite human beings. But Glenn was named co-chair of the national convention. So with that, and also with state parties are kind of internally ranked within the RNC on like based on like how well your fundraising is, how you work with the RNC, like all these different things. And we play very well with others, and we do what the RNC wants. So we're pretty good up there. And we are first in the South, which even though we didn't have our presidential preference primary, we're still considered first in the South, which is a really big deal too. So all those variables put together meant that we were going to have an awesome hotel space, and that like pretty much anything we wanted, we were going to be able to get for like speakers and hotel event, all that kind of stuff. So we literally like just started planning things, put a budget together, started talking to donors, got logos, all this kind of stuff. And then coronavirus happened, and everyone was like, oh, it'll be over. We don't have anything to worry about. And then it got to be like May or whenever, and they were like, we got to take a look. And then they canceled it, and then, or not canceled it, but they moved it to Jacksonville. So when they moved it to Jacksonville, I have a vendor that I use, and I was working with him on Charlotte stuff, but whenever they did the Jacksonville stuff, he immediately went to Jacksonville to try and like scout locations. And then they assigned us our hotel room for Jacksonville. So we, by our state party rules and also by the national committee rules, we had to have what's called a delegation meeting. And that's when you elect different officers within your state party apparatus, like those that are your national delegates and alternates. You have to elect them to serve on like certain committees and stuff like that. So we had this great event here in Columbia, socially distanced, and governor was there, private meeting, whatever. That was on a Monday. We found out our hotel assignment on a Friday. We had the delegation meeting on like a Monday. I had to put a credit card down for like $130,000 for all these hotel rooms on Wednesday. So then that Thursday, I was sitting in my office. I was sitting here, and I don't watch the news throughout the day. Like I don't keep my TV on that. I listen to Pandora because I'm like, anything's gonna happen on the news, I'll get like an alert, or I'll find out about beforehand or after, whatever. So I don't ever watch the president's press conferences or briefings or anything either. So my phone starts blowing up, and I'm like, what's going on? And then like some of my vendors, it's like all these calls and text messages of people that I wasn't expecting or anything, like just start coming in. I was like, what in the world? I like pick up my phone, and my communications director, she walked in and she was like, the president just canceled national convention. And I was like, what are you talking about? No, they didn't. She's like, yeah, they did. So I immediately get on Twitter, and like one of the first headlines I see is national convention canceled. I was like, no, this is a bad joke. So I immediately called Glenn. I'm like, hey, Glenn. And he's like, hey, Hope. And I was like, did y'all cancel national convention and you forget to tell me? And he was like, no. He was like, I just had a meeting, and he named some of the people that he was on a meeting with, which are on the board for national convention. He's like, we just met an hour ago. That didn't happen. And I was like, you better check again. And I read him the headline, and he was like, let me call you back. I was like, yeah, you call me back. So like, while I'm waiting on him, the chairman, he was on the call at that point, so he didn't hear any of this. So he heard Claire and I talking. So chairman walks in and was like, what's going on? And I was like, apparently they canceled national convention. He's like, no. And I was like, come look. So I like pulled Twitter back up and everything. And by that time, Glenn calls me and he was like, yep, looks like they canceled national convention. And I was like, no, like, no. No, that's not real. So then, so that was that. So then later that night,
does that put a big toll on the whole campaign process?
It doesn't. I will say this. There's a whole step in our party budget. So I've got like my operating budget, which is like a standard budget each year. And then I have what's our victory budget, which victory is our campaign arm during election years. So that's a whole separate budget. And then whenever it's national convention time, we have a separate budget for that. And what we're going to do with that money is like split it between my operating and my victory budget. So extra funds, because with it, if we were going to be in Charlotte, we thought we were going to make like $250,000. And then when it got moved to Tampa, we were going to have some donors, some of my major donors drop out, which was fine. And we weren't going to be able to have as many guests go and all that. So we were like, okay, we'll make like 80 to 100, which is still good money. But not having it, that money just went out the window. But we have been fortunate in that some of those donors still gave, and I didn't have to do an event or spend money on that. And also with the way that the timeline was so crunched with everything, from, if it would have been in Jacksonville, there was a very short deadline to turn around large events. It was a blessing in disguise. And then people, like, it would have taken one person to die from coronavirus in Jacksonville, and that would have been the end of it. So, while it was upsetting and like disappointing, because we were all really looking forward to it, at the same time, it's better to be safer than sorry and like take the adult view look at it. But let me back up. So one thing we did, so after they canceled that, they only sent 6 people from each state to Charlotte for like the business part of national convention. And so those 6 people were great. But what we did here in Columbia a week later is we had a delegation event. So we invited all of our folks that would have gone to national convention and did an event with them. And I had like the governor there, our congressman, and I still had like gifts and like we had a special logo made and stuff like that. And I had some of my friends that work for the Trump campaign. They did videos and stuff. So we still tried to make them feel special, and they were very grateful for that, because that was something we could do for them. It sucks that we didn't have the enthusiasm of like a week-long thing, but I will tell you this, the way I think that I watched the Democrats and I was impressed kind of by how they did it, but I was like, this is boring, and like, be more exciting. And then with the Republicans, I thought our videos were great too, and like hyped. And I'm glad our convention was after the Dems, because I think we probably were able to amp it up a little more after we saw how boring theirs was going to be. Like we were able to amp it up a little more. So that's how it was affected, but I'm glad I didn't have to plan it all. It's kind of like, whew, I don't have to be the host of like 300 people in a different city for a week, so.
That's good. Well, I know that the president and everything has an impact in that, but the voters, like, they're mostly concerned about global warming, like the whole Black Lives Matter movement going on. What do you think specifically is going to affect the race, like the voter concern issues?
So a lot of both parties do this, and states do it as well. It's called data modeling. So it's where a lot of these like poll surveys and stuff, you take a sample of folks and you call them. And the way that we do it on the RNC side of things is we take like consumer data and different like I can't think of the term, like ethnicity breakdown, gender breakdown, all that kind of stuff. And we take a sampling of it, and they call and they quote unquote poll people, not on candidate specific, but on issues. And so it's a huge deal, huge project. And so ours, for instance, what we got back for South Carolina, the number one issue was COVID, obviously. That number one issue for everybody. The number two issue was law and order. And so people basically don't want what's happening in South Carolina that's happening out in like Oregon and Washington and Chicago and those areas. And so that was the number two. And then we had economy and then education. So those were like our top four issues. So that's how we base our messaging and what we're going to talk to voters about and target them. So we have a specific message, and depending on like how hard we go with that message depends on the kind of voter it is, like whether it's a hard Republican or a swing voter or hard. We don't target hard Democrats, but if we were, we would have a special message for those issues as well. So that was what kind of like our plan was, to talk to voters and everything. Well, then 2 weeks ago now, whenever the Supreme Court stuff happened and Justice Ginsburg passed away, SCOTUS became a huge deal. And so our messaging is conservative courts and judges. And obviously Senator Graham is in the heart of that, being chairman of judiciary. So there's a huge target here in South Carolina, a lot of money on both sides flowing in and like just being bombarded. I don't think anybody saw this race going the way it's going now. So does that kind of answer your question, like how we use that? Is that what you were looking for? Yeah.
Yeah. So has that also changed your political views?
It has. So I think that it has, but it hasn't. I am not as socially conservative as a lot of other conservatives are. So, and I just because of my age and like the way I grow up and like who my friends are and people I surround myself with, like I'm still very conservative, but at the same time on the social aspect, I'm not 110% conservative on that. But like for the whole Black Lives Matter movement, for instance, I think it is a real thing, and it makes me sick what happens. But I will say this: whenever it was Memorial Day weekend, and we actually had the protest here in Columbia, and my office is downtown. And I think there's like a huge difference between the real Black Lives Matter movement and what that stands for. But you have these agitators that are not for the Black Lives Matter movement, and they're like, and I hate to say Antifa because it sounds like I'm spitting rhetoric, but and I'll get to my point in a minute where I'm going with this. But they're agitators that just want to cause chaos. They're not really protesting or rioting or whatever you want to call it. They're not doing it for a real reason.
It's more so on social media. Yes. I see it the most.
Yes. So that has to do with what I'm going to say. You're exactly right. So my office is in downtown Columbia. We're about half a mile away from the State House. And we're in our own building. And so when this was going on, it was after Memorial Day weekend when all that happened. So like that Monday morning, I get to my office and checking my email, and I had an email from one of our county party chairs, and he was like, "How's everything at the office? Are y'all okay?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" So I called him and I was like, hey, what's your email about? He was like, well, I saw on the Black Lives Matter Columbia page that they put your address out there and they're planning to protest at your office. And I was like, hold up, wait a minute. So I went to the page and it was there and I saw it and they had put it on Twitter too. And I'm like, this isn't the real Black Lives Matter movement. Cause that, you know how like once you like start Facebook stalking people, you like find more and more out.
That real information.
Exactly. That's where I was like, I was headed in that hole. So I called, we have a great relationship with the cops around our area here. And so I called one of the officers that always helps me with stuff. And I was like, hey, this is what's going on, da, 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 da. And he was like, all right, text me the screenshots. I'll talk to you later. I'll call you back. I was like, cool. So then we have a good relationship with SLED agents. So I called him and I was like, hey, da 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 is happening. And he was like, send me the screenshots. So I sent them to him while I was on the phone and he was like, oh my gosh. He was like, let me flag this, call you back. I was like, okay, cool. So we don't have a security, like we have a security system at my office, like your typical like ADT system, but nothing more than that. And so we actually got a security camera, or 4 security cameras throughout outside. They were put up that afternoon. We were able to find a company and they came that afternoon to put them up. And so then the fire department, the fire chief comes to check our structure, our building structure, because they had deemed it a real threat. The police department came to come and look at everything and they deemed it a real threat. And then I had to call my insurance agency and make sure we had terrorism insurance, which I didn't even know was a thing. And we actually had it, did not know that. But whenever President Trump deemed Antifa a terrorist organization, terrorism insurance immediately kicks in if something is to happen in my office. So it became like super real at that point in time. So the next day, which is when they were like planning to protest and everything, the cops came and it was probably like 3:30 and they're like, y'all need to leave. They're starting to gather at the state house. We don't know where they're going to head. They're unpredictable. Y'all need to go ahead and like leave your offices. So we had to leave. And so then, very luckily, like nothing happened. They stayed on Main Street, which is 2 blocks over. Nothing happened. We were very, very blessed. But like your senses are heightened and everything. And I actually drove by the protest and I was living here in Columbia, like watching everything. And it wasn't the real Black Lives Matter movement. It was these agitators. And that's what gets me, is that I feel like it's a good thing. It's good to have those voices and those beliefs. But then whenever you have those outside agitators come in, it makes the whole organization look bad and not viable. You know what I mean? Like that's what I hate about it, So I definitely have a different viewpoint on those kind of organizations now, for sure. Like the real one versus the agitators and the bad ones. So
I feel like that's a sad case that they're taking such a big issue and making a fool out of it.
Exactly.
But you explained it perfectly, and I feel like more people need to know that that's not helping an issue.
Like not at all. So, I hate that for them, So
So I have 2 more questions to ask you.
Okay.
And the second to last question is, if a poli-sci student was to come up to you and ask you what helped you build your resume, what would you tell them? What's the most important thing they need to learn in high school and college?
So I would say networking and building those relationships, and putting yourself out there. I've not always been this like talkative or outgoing. It's been developed.
I'm just like that too.
It's been developed throughout the years, but it's because I'm like put in those kind of situations. But you've got to have an open mind. And this is the other thing, is that no matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal, a conservative, a socialist, a Constitution Party, whatever party you're a member of, you got to respect the other side. And you can't get in shouting matches, because that person's going to have an opinion and I'm going to have an opinion. You're not going to be able to change my mind because I am a member of that party and they are a member of that party, but it's okay to be friends. Like I have some of my dearest friends are on the Democrat Party or work for Democrat candidates. And yeah, on the professional side, we work at each other and we go at each other all the time. But personally, we can go, I don't know if you're 21 yet, but you can go get a beer, get a coffee together, or hang out, or go to each other's weddings. Like, it's okay to be friends with the other side. It's okay to
business ruin the relationship.
Yeah, you can't take it personal. me being a Republican, if I'm called a racist one more time or a vote suppressor one more time this election, like, I've about had it with the name calling. And also being a woman in politics. When I first became ED, I went to an event, and a former executive director of the Republican Party, who's a man. I'm the first female. He's a man.
I read that.
he walked up to me, and it was somebody that I respected at the time. He walked up to me and he was like, I guess we can't call it the executive director of fraternity anymore now that you're in it. And I was like, come at me, bro. Like, that's not cool. We're good now. And he knows like how that made me feel. But it was after somebody else told him he needed to apologize. But at the same time, you can't take it personal. And you've got to be strong in your beliefs. Like, I wouldn't be putting myself out here or taking threats or anything like what I'm doing now if I didn't actually believe in what I'm fighting for, if that makes sense. My like core values and everything. And you got to remember that you are fighting for the greater good. And what you do in politics actually affects future generations too. You're setting the times or, the timeline for those kind of things. But networking is number one, not taking it personally. And social media. Be very, very careful with social media. Like whenever I tweet something, no matter how like minuscule it may be or whatever, it's under the light. Like I could tweet like something sarcastic that might have a meaning to like a group of friends, but if a reporter read it, they would be like, oh, what does she mean by that? Like, is this a cryptic message? You got to be careful with your social media, with what you put on your Facebook, because anything is Googleable or however you want to call it now too. So exactly. So be very careful with social media too. So
as the election is coming up, what are your big plans as ED?
What now?
What are your big plans as ED from now up till November 3rd?
Drinking a lot of coffee, getting no sleep, and getting out the vote. It's on like Donkey Kong. We are in the final stretch. Everything that we do from here on out is very, very calculated. And it's just about turning our voters out at this point in time. And the thing with elections is that Election day isn't just one day anymore. It's a month long. Like early in-person absentee voting starts on Monday. So really Election day is a month long and starts Monday. So we will be having events and all sorts of things statewide. And I don't want to wake up on November 4th thinking that I didn't do something that should have been done, if that makes sense. Like I want to make sure that any and everything that we were able to do, we were able to do. And if we lose any races, I want to know that the state party did as much as it could have done for that race, if that makes sense. So no sleep and a lot of coffee.
Okay, Dunkin' Donuts has the best coffee.
Dude, large iced coffee with cream sugar and a turbo shot. Way to go.
I have to try the exam time.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You were great. It was so nice meeting you.
Too.
And if you ever need anything, even if it's not with the Republican Party, but with any other organization or anything, please do not hesitate to reach out and let me know for sure.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye.